I had a run-in with Boy George. Boy George is the biggest Latino drug dealer ever.
Who is Boy George Rivera, the James Bond from the Bronx? Boy George was a multi-millionaire by the age of 21, a brilliant and powerful, ambitious drug entrepreneur who saw an opportunity and seized it. It's a lit he made over $15 million in a 2-year run. Government sources say that the Boy George and his Bronx, New York-based heroin organization grossed $250,000 a week. Boy George, barely out of his teens, built himself a reputation of being one of the wealthiest drug lords who came out of New York and one of the youngest to be charged with the Kingpin statue. At the end of the 80s, while America concerned itself with the crack epidemic, Boy George was running one of the most lucrative and aggressive heroin organizations in the city. Flamboyant and charismatic, the Puerto Rican drug baron was one of a kind. Equal parts gangster, CEO and a gentleman who juxtaposed street march, innovative marketing and ruthless efficiency to create a heroin empire. While other kids of his age were still worrying about what clothes to wear or what girls to date, Boy George and the obsession case are the street legend, the exotic James Bond cars, the Christmas Eve yacht party, the heroin of girls tattooing his name on their bodies. The glamour, the jewels, the stacks of money. Boy George had it all, and he had it as all as a teenager. He was definitely one of the best to ever in the drug game. Boy George was the master of the Bronx universe, using management style that might have been honed in a corporate boardroom and a brand of violence common to the drug dealers. Boy George carved out an empire and flooded the streets of Manhattan and the South Bronx with a brand of high-quality heroin with the brand names Obsession and Sledgehammer. He was ruthless and powerful. Federal authorities said that they linked him to a dozen homicides that marked to climb to the top. The 20-year-old old CEO allegedly ran a $9 million a year heroin ring. Boy George was making crazy money, sports says. Everybody knows that. He was known for having a temper and being involved in several shootouts to cement his reputation in the streets. Yet he never missed an opportunity to intimidate. Boy George didn't mess around when it came to time to get paid either. George killed mercilessly with a hired hitman, killing anyone who crossed his path, workers who came up short, anyone who stole. Boy George was merciless. The murderous and smart dealer was so young that his own lieutenants called him a prodigy. He kept loyalty strong in his organization. At least a dozen homicides investigators said could be directly linked to George's rise to the top, which earned him a reputation that encouraged loyalty by force of death. If you weren't with that clique, they didn't really mess with you. And one thing Boy George was known for, besides being calculated and violent, was his cars. This first car was the Benz 190. Get up. Boy George didn't play when it came to cars. He bought Ferraris, Lamborghinis and a Bentley. All this only added to his legend. He pulled up in the Lincoln Town Cars to show us. Flacco says he had the Porsche pressing buttons. Showing up, the license plate moved and the lights changed. Barely out of his teens, Boy George built an organization so lucrative that he registered a fleet of Mercedes, BMWs and customized Porsches to one of his corporate fronts. Tuxedo Enterprises. The press called me the Puerto Rican James Bond because of the gadgets in my car. I was on foot when I was arrested. I could have gotten to my car and still be chasing me. Boy George said James Bond, one of George's heroes, inspired 50 grand worth of special features added to the 190 Mercedes. Yet, radar detectors manned the car's front and rear. The license plate slid into the side compartment and a strobe light blinded anyone following him. Secret compartments in the door panels and the floor hid weapons and gas. Defendant George Rivera is sentenced in 1991 inter alia life imprisonment to be followed by a 5-year term of supervised release for his convictions of conspiracy, distribute heroin and attempted income tax evasion. Appeals from an order of the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York.